Hey, welcome back to the Road to Retirement. We're back with another episode, and our host, Tony Marlette Jr., is here. He's in the house. Great to see you, Tony.
Do we still say in the house? Is that like okay for 2023, 2024?
All right, so I'm already the jokes about how old and out of touch with the hip lingo you kids use. I can't. You financial advisors and insurance people and accountants, I can't keep up with you.
No one can.
Well, Tony, great to be here. Thank you for having me on the show today. It's great to be back with you today. And
Glad to be here.
Chris isn't on the episode today. Our fearless leader, Chris Anselmo. I'm sure he's out conquering the world right now. However, you've got a special guest on today's show, a huge get for the show. I don't know how you did it, but
It is.
Introduce our guest for today.
It was a huge get. I had to walk about 25 feet over to his office and ask him to join us today. So Zach Padden is here. He's our estate planning attorney, and he does a lot of our legal work, helps our clients out, wills, trusts, power of attorneys. So he's been pretty involved, pretty engaged from the beginning. And Zach, welcome.
Hey, thank you guys for having me today. When Tony made that long trek across the office, I couldn't say no.
Well,
it's such a long trip for him. He's perfect.
Get my steps in already.
So we have an attorney on the show today. I love it.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot before about obviously when Chris has been on as far as how financial and legal work together. But something we've been finding too, I've been bringing Zach in on a lot of my appointments. He's had me talk to a few of his clients because of how closely and how much overlap really there is between people's financial future, not even their future, but their present, or at least their maybe intermediate future, and their legal needs are. So I'll get a lot of times, I don't think I've had too many meetings lately where somebody has not brought up protecting assets or making sure that, the right thing happens when they pass away. So these are obviously things that people work for throughout their life, throughout their career. They don't want to just take them a chance. So obviously it's really important that we address stuff like that.
Oh, that's huge. Well, Zach, what is it that you do there? Obviously, you're an estate planning attorney, so you help people with that to plan for their estates so, they maybe don't get stuck in probate or avoid their loved ones avoid excessive taxes, that type of thing?
Yeah, so the big focus for most people is avoiding probate. Most people have been through an experience with a loved one, and then they're like, I never want my kids, relatives to go through that again. So our primary focus a lot of times is, okay, what all do you have? What all do you own? A lot of people own a house. There's ways we can protect their houses from nursing homes. There's ways that we can set this up so it goes to their kids quicker, easier, and they're going to not have any issues. One of the big things people are realizing, though, is just putting things in your kid's name isn't the best thing. The old school way of thinking of, take it out of my name, it's not mine anymore. Well, now your kids own your house. What happens when your son gets a divorce or they're in a car accident? That's their property. So we try to give people all their different options they have, and once they see what's their best option, then we talk to them. But a lot of people want to then protect their money for their kids, and they may have it just sitting in a checking account. And that's where we bring people like Tony in, who will come in and say, well, here's what we can do that's a lot better than letting your money just sit there.
Yeah, and I mean, we've had some, especially with tax season, when February through April, which we talked about on the last podcast I did, we've had a lot of people ask questions about this kind of stuff. I have such and such amount sitting in my savings account or in my investment account. I'm not, even whether you're doing something with it or not, they want to protect it, make sure that it goes to the right place. And I think something that's become more important too, or just as important, and Tony, you probably know a little bit about this as well, is protecting your assets from the government or a nursing home, not coming after them. It's not really the way it works, but having to use it on that or spend down assets to qualify to get into assisted living or a nursing home facility.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going through that with my parents, and I think I brought it up on past shows. My mom has late stage Parkinson's. It's pretty bad, and she's been in full time nursing home care for 3 years, and um, it's about $11,000 a month,
Wow.
right? So my parents didn't have the money to cover it. They had some insurance, they had Social Security, so about 2,000 of that is covered by some insurance. 1,000 of it is covered by them, and the rest is covered by Medicaid. Medicare doesn't cover any of it. Medicare is out of the picture, but Medicaid steps in, but you have to be down to no money, right? She can't have any personal assets really. And we're trying to protect the farm that my dad inherited from my grandfather after she went in. My grandfather died, and my dad inherited uh, a part of the farm. And so that farm has been in the family since it was homesteaded in the 1855, actually.
Wow.
So my grandfather grew up there, my dad grew up there, and I grew up there because there are two houses on the farm. So it's been in the family, and we don't want to sell it. But the state might, if my dad passes away, it's hard now at this point to protect it. So there are things you can do if you work with somebody like Zach. Our listeners out there, you need the Zach attack to protect your property from the government getting it. If you or a loved one should need long-term care, you don't want, if you need long-term care, you don't want all your assets and your property to be taken up by the state to help pay for it rather than leaving it to your family, right? Is that what you were getting at, Zach?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's people that never go into the nursing homes, but the stat that we always tell people is 2 out of 3 people over the age of 65 will spend some time in a long-term care facility. That's a lot more people than you realize, but one of the biggest things is come in early. You don't have to be in your 70s, 80s, 90s to think about your estate plan. When you're in your 20s, 30s, you should be thinking about completely different things than your 50s, 60s, 70s, than your 80s and 90s. So there's never a bad time to come in, but you should at least set up a time to come in and talk to somebody.
There's a lot of misconceptions out there too. Even the couple times I've brought Zach or Chris on towards the end of my financial reviews, and there's people that think that they literally have zero control over, if they put money in something or somewhere, they have zero. They can't get it. That's not necessarily the case either. We're not going to obviously go over that now, but an informative session, you come in for an info session, you can always get the correct information. And I think the most beneficial part is just there's different levels of this too. You don't have to go all the way with the most comprehensive package right away if you just want to get a few things taken care of.
Yeah. So what would that be, Zach? Like, I mean, obviously you recommend people all have, I would assume, powers of attorney, things like that, maybe transfer on death for property, things like that. Or what
Yeah.
are some of the things people need to be aware of?
So at my age, I'm married and I'm renting.
Mhm.
I don't need transfer on death deeds. All I really need is a will that says, God forbid I pass away, everything goes to my lovely wife. And if both of us pass where we wanted to go, then we have power of attorney set up for people like that. So, okay, I'm in the hospital, can't make my own decision. Who do I trust? I can't pay my bills. Who do I trust?
Mhm.
And that's the things you're thinking about at a younger age. If you have children, you want to pick who's going to be the guardian of your kids. God forbid something terrible happens.
Mhm.
And that's one of the biggest things people don't realize. You want to set these things up so it's your decisions, not somebody else's. And once you start getting property, survivorship deeds between spouses, transfer on death affidavits to whoever you want your property to go to, saves your family time, money, and probate. So there's always going to be changing items in your estate plan. It's just what you need at that time. And when you come and sit down, we can go over your plan and we would figure out what works best for you.
So do you think when we work with people, we prioritize. So we can't throw financial and legal at them all at once. They'd easily be overwhelmed. Anybody would be.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a priority, like one over the other?
I think it depends where they're at in their life. If they're really needing to invest, I'm going to get them set up on investments first. A TOD on their house takes no time in their head to think about it when you explain probate's 4.5 to 5% of their assets value to transfer it. This cheap deed right here is a lot better. So you can usually get people on that, but power of attorneys and stuff, I usually put a little bit on the back compared to getting them at least set up so they have some kind of financial literacy going on.
All right. See, I think I would agree. It's even if somebody's, they're getting ready to work with us, but they still have some financial things in order. It may not be with us, but they really want to get the legal stuff taken care of. We'll prioritize the legal side of it and then say, okay, once this gets set up, since your financial stuff is sort of set up, maybe not exactly the way you want. And again, I agree. I think it just depends on what stage you're at and where you're at in your journey for financial and legal.
Yeah, if my aunt and uncle came in right now, I'd be worried about their legal first, making sure all that's set up, and then we talk about finance on the back burner.
Right.
But it's a case by case basis, is what I've kind of realized. You just don't know from meeting to meeting what people want to, because if they're really focused on financial at first, let them ride where they want to ride, and then we'll jump back in and help them on the backside with the legal.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. And I've said this before about taxes. I really think that you need to incorporate all this when you're doing true financial planning. So for me, I don't have to refer them to somebody outside and say, okay, just make sure you do it. The onus is on you. I can literally introduce them to Chris or Zach and say, hey, this is the next step here. This is how we're going to proceed. And again, the same thing with taxes. We can do all that in-house too. And I think that's a really important piece.
Oh, it's huge. And so that's what I love about Brookside and what you do there and the team you've assembled is that you cover all the bases. You have wealth management, you have the tax side of it, and you have the legal, and it all ties together. I mean, estate planning, beneficiary designations, trusts tie into your wealth management at some point. I mean, in your life, you need all of those. Obviously, you need CPAs and tax professionals. You need to work with a trusted financial advisor and fiduciaries who are looking out for your best interests, and somebody who's quarterbacking it, tying all these things together. And that's something that I think is really unique about what you do there. And I think it's so important. And Zach, what you do is important. And I know a big part of this before we go, Zach, I got to believe that you're probably a fan of trusts, right? To avoid probate, or am I off on that?
I am. There are certain people who really need trust, and there's some people it's not as big of an issue. Now, for people who are always like, I need a living trust. If you're leaving everything to your one kid, you're giving it to him outright, probably don't need a trust. You can set up payable and deaths, beneficiaries, etc.
Sure.
Now, if you walk into me and say, I have 7 kids with 7 spouses, now you have 14 people who have to agree on everything. That becomes a little bit more of a headache where you could put a trust together and one person's in charge or 2 people. So again, it's a case by case basis, but a trust gives a lot of people a peace of mind. And then there's checks. There's checks and balances with it compared to just here, take your money, do with it as you wish. With trust, we can set up parameters. And if you have young kids, imagine giving an 18-year-old your inheritance. Where's that money going to go? It's not going to go to education.
18,
retirement.
25. If
Yeah.
somebody had given me even, let's say, $500,000 when I was 21, I'd probably be dead in a ditch somewhere. And that money would be long gone, right? I mean, you can't, you just got to be careful. And even if your kids are like, my 21-year-old daughter she's the most mature person I know, very professional, but still at that age, you don't want to leave the whole nest egg on a person like that at that point, probably.
Exactly. You can set it up so they get access to so much money at certain ages. And that's one of the biggest benefits. And then your trustee, whoever's in charge, could say, they have tuition payments due. That's great. we'll pay that. But then if they're like, hey, I want to go to Mexico for a week for spring break, let's not spend $10,000 on spring break. That's not a good use of your money.
Sure. Right.
So setting up a trust is really good for a lot of people. But again, everything's just dependent on your circumstances. And when you would come in, we would set up what's the best plan for you individually.
Yeah, I think it all comes together, and it's really an important thing to while we're doing all this, like I said, with financial planning, just to bring all this in. And a lot of people are not aware of the simplicity of some of this stuff. Obviously, the more complicated you want to get, the more you're looking to do. It may involve a few more steps, but I've seen Chris and Zach on these appointments before, and really they go through the information, and that's the best thing. Kind of what Zach just said too. A trust isn't necessarily for everybody. We're not pushing unnecessary solutions or products to people just so they pay more, so we make more. So we'll assess your situation, and like Tony said earlier, we're fiduciaries. We're here to do what's in your best interest.
That's awesome. Well, guys, great show today. Is there anything else you want to add? I mean, what if our listeners out there are looking to get an estate plan in place or a financial plan, a wealth plan in place?
Right on cue. Did you know I was going to hit your favorite button?
I did not, but as I started talking, it popped up there. Very good.
So our website, brooksidetax.com. Obviously, you can give us a call at our office, 440-886-3550. We've been getting a fair amount of walk-in traffic. I think people have realized we've been here now for a few years in this specific location. Our Facebook page as well at Brookside Financial.
All right. Well, great show today, guys. The road to retirement has never been better or looked better. It's like it got a fresh pave right on there. Smooth road, smooth sailing today on the show. And I think it's largely due to our very special guest today, Zach. Zach, glad you're part of the team there. And you guys, thanks for having me on the show. Listeners, that does it for today's episode of The Road to Retirement with our host, Anthony Marlette Jr.
Thanks, everyone. Talk to you later.